These are the slimline pin kit that I'm going to use to make another fire ant pin. You can see the fire ants in the Ziploc bag over there. I'm going to apply the fire ants to the brass tubes with a thick super glue. I'm going to try to this time to just leave the brass color as it is and not paint it like I did last time. I think I can get a good coating of fire ants and the brass won't be that noticeable. And I'll then take those brass tubes with the fire ants and cast them Alumilite to make some pin turning blanks. After coating the brass tubes with thick super glue, I roll the brass tubes in the fire ants using a dowel to kind of hold the brass tube and keep the glue off my fingers in the process. And I did this at both ends of the dials, so both ends of the dial now have these brass tubes with the fire ants coating the brass tube. So I'm going on to the next step now, which will be to cast these in Alumilite. Okay, I've now mixed up equal parts of A and B Alumilite, and after putting the brass tubes coated and fire ants in the mold, I poured the mixture of Alumilite A and B over that and letting it set up now, and we'll see how this works out. You have to be very careful when you're mixing these two parts so that you get the proportions properly, and that way you'll get a good clear cast. Otherwise it can end up being kind of milky in color. Okay, this is what the pin blanks look like after I've separated them and trimmed off the ends at the disc sander. And I will now put these on a mandrel and we'll turn them up and see if we can make a pin. Okay, what I've done now is turn these blanks down to pretty close to the bushings. Sanded it to 500. You can see there's still a lot of white in this. Even though I had the Alumilite mixture right, sometimes there's enough moisture in the fire ants that I think it causes the Alumilite to turn white. So we're going to see how this turns out after I give it a thin CA treatment, and then we'll wet sand it with micromesh and then polish it up, see what it looks like. Well, this is what we've got after 9 applications of thin CA glue. Not a pretty sight, but I guess fire ants aren't really something pretty anyway, although they look really pretty under a microscope. The last pair of pins I made, the owner did look at them under a microscope and could see all the whole parts of the fire ant, so he really loved it. So I don't know how this set's going to work out, but we'll see. I'm going to now go to the micromesh and wet sand these. Well, here's the completed fire ant pen. I'm not real happy with it. It really didn't come out very well. Last one I did, I had actually painted the brass tube black. Left the brass this time so it might would show through a little bit, but it just doesn't look that good. I had some problems with some of the Alumilite breaking loose from the brass tube, so I think what I've got to do is put some paint on that brass tube and try to get a little better bonding between the Alumilite and the tube, especially with all these fire ants that are kind of stuck in there. I did try to attach the brass tube, as you saw, to the fire ants with super glue, and I thought that might hold up, but I think what happened was that kept the Alumilite from bonding with the tube and created some of the pieces of Alumilite to break loose from the tube while I was turning it. So I'm going to try this again, see if I can get a little better outcome.